Do not confuse this with treatment or mental health advice or direction. Nothing on this podcast is made to supplement or supersede the relationship and direction of your mental health caretakers. Although David Kozlowski is a licensed marriage and family therapist, he is not functioning as a certified mental health professional in this environment. And same applies to any professional who may appear on the OG Therapy podcast. Welcome to the OG Therapy.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of OG Therapy. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different than most episodes, only because I'm going to be talking about something that I always swear I never talk about or I never want to talk about, and I always avoid this topic. But today I'm going to get into this topic. And again, my producer Brandon's going to be helping me out because this is something that I definitely don't want to talk about alone because this involves other people. What I'm referring to is there's an election going on 7 days from the day I'm actually recording this. When this comes out, it'll probably be about 5 days left. I've had a number of people in my own personal life, some DMs, some clients, and just people in my life hitting me up and asking me, hey, how do I handle dinner conversations, family get-togethers, gatherings, parties, where people insist on talking about politics when either they don't want to talk about politics or they just don't want to talk about politics with someone who has opposing views or someone who's being combative, that type of thing. So today's episode, Brandon and I are going to get into this a little bit because I've had many different situations and scenarios over the holidays with families having difficult conversations. Now, even if there's not an election, politics is something in recent years that can be a common theme at families. And this is how it usually starts out. It usually starts out with one person talking openly out loud about their political views. Usually it's talking trash about someone from a different political party. It's making fun of the opposite political party. Now, when people have told me this, it usually starts out with, hey, my one uncle or my aunt that just kind of says whatever, doesn't have a filter. They will just start talking and mocking the other political party. They'll start talking some trash. And so the other person sitting there, the person I'm talking to, is sitting there listening to this, not wanting to jump in, or sometimes immediately jumping in. But most of the time people lay low. They kind of hang out for a little bit, hoping that it'll die out and the conversation won't spark a deeper dialogue amongst more people. But what typically tends to take place is person says something disparaging, making fun of another political party. Someone else goes, yeah, I know those people are like this. And then another person jumps in. But there's usually people on the outside on the fringe that are sitting there kind of wondering where this is going to go, that maybe they have a difficult political view. But there's always one or two people that will jump into it and contend with that person, say, oh, yeah, well, you think your party's so perfect? Then what usually unfolds is not a very nuanced, intellectual, intelligent conversation. Usually what happens is a lot of people quoting the things that their team or their party says, and then the other team quoting things that their team and their party says. Then they have a typical back and forth argument with a person who they're related to, whether it be through marriage or through blood. The problem is they're having this argument and this issue with someone that they're closely connected to. And when they're closely connected to someone, it miffs them, it boggles them how someone that they know could have such a crazy, different, weird opinion. Or at other times, they're not surprised and they go, I figures Uncle Joey would have this opinion. He's such a bigot, or he's such a this, or he's such a that. I just want to talk about what I think you should do based upon if you have one goal, and if that goal is to be able to get through a family dinner without confrontation, without getting into a deep conversation, potential argument that could lead people to get their feelings hurt, cause people to leave the dinner or the gathering in feeling some sort of way, animosity, resentment. Shoot, you guys, families have plenty of ammunition to fire at each other. Families have plenty of history, plenty of grievances, plenty of issues that they could bring up. They do not need to bring up politics to figure out that they don't like each other or they got beef with each other. Politics is just that end all be all. It just kind of puts a nail in the coffin of any estranged relationships that are currently going on in the family. So my producer, Brandon, he had a couple thoughts and a couple questions for me that he wanted me to weigh in on. But thanks you guys for taking this dive with us today into something that we normally avoid. But in this situation, in this day and age, it can't be avoided. But again, if your goal is to have less drama at family parties, to avoid these conversations, then this podcast is for you. If you're the type of person that chooses war instead of peace, I can't help you out. You don't need to listen to a podcast about how to start family drama, how to be in family drama, and how to make family drama worse. All you got to do is just say what you think and feel without any sort of fear of repercussions, fear of how it's going to make you look, or without any sort of worry or concern about what other people in your family think. So, Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second to ask you, what are some of your thoughts and feelings about the political temperature right now in 2024 in our democracy?
To say the least, everybody is stressed. Everybody is, it's at a fever pitch. I grew up in a dynamic where I had one set of parents that were far right and a set of parents that were far left. So it's been very interesting growing up, seeing the extremes, quote unquote, and now seeing where we're at politically. It's not just, what do I think is going to be best for the country? What do I think is going to be best for policy? It's about, no, my team needs to win. My team needs to win.
Wait, wasn't there like during the last election 4 years ago some big beef between very close, intimate family? We don't have to get into it, but I think something had to do with like a sign on someone's lawn. Oh. There was some big beef that was happening over politics that I think some people didn't talk to each other for a while, right?
Yeah. Family stuff has been very tough. That is like in my extended family at dinners, it is. We do not talk about religion and we do not talk about politics because it goes to a fever pitch very quickly.
So you don't do it anymore because you found out it doesn't work well.
Try not to, but I feel like, I don't know what you've experienced, is that especially during the holidays, everything's tight. Everybody's got their own emotional things coming up, that politics just seems to be the vehicle to justify attacking somebody without saying, you ruined my childhood, or I don't like you for this, that they can say, oh, you're not a good person because you don't believe the way that I believe. I feel like it's being used as a weapon just to attack out and lash out for other family beef under this guise of it's socially acceptable to talk to somebody about this politically.
And I think, you nailed it. I think on the other hand, too, I think when people will bring it up at family parties, they're trying to connect with other people. And they're assuming that if they bring that up, it's like bringing up like, hey, did you see the Broncos win last night or their loss?
Yeah.
Whether you love the Broncos or don't like the Broncos, it's a conversation. Whether you hate Democrats or you hate Republicans, it just brings up a conversation. The problem is, unlike football, there's not a start and stop to this season.
That's a very good point. Also, too, thinking it from the sports perspective and just thinking about how I've seen, like, even at work, people talking about politics and asking, it is, to me, objectively, seems like a very unique heat check of, do I like this person based on political views? And I feel like political views have so much personal emotion and stories and situations that get tied into it that we're thinking, oh, let me connect with somebody on politics. But that's so deep rooted and has so many different spirals in it where, like, some of my family members are on one side of the political fence just because their parents are on the other, just to have the opposition. And then they say, this is who I am. These are my politics, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, but what about what we have in common? It just seems like we take part of our personalities and attach it to politics, but it's our most extreme side of our personalities. And we don't find things to connect with people that aren't so heated.
So what was your family able to do to like stop some of these fights and arguments? Because what you said was like, so we don't talk about these things anymore, especially in the holidays and dinner tables. But there's got to be more to it than just that, right?
Well, we had a lot of blow-ups and freakouts and a lot of people yelling at each other to the point now where we had one family member who would constantly bring up politics to try to antagonize the table and to be boisterous, and then nobody would say anything. And then we would just sit there for 30 minutes as this person's ranting, saying, you're bad for this, and nobody knew how to say anything. And some other family members, including myself at times, which I'm not proud of, would just domineer the other person, like, we're not talking about this. There's no point. And it turned into not even a political conversation of, we're just trying to eat dinner. And it became so head-to-head, people quit coming to family dinners, people have chosen sides, they don't show up at things. However, my uncle, he's specifically just anytime it gets brought up, as soon as it starts getting brought up, he goes, well, hey, we don't talk about that. And he just took charge and said, we just don't talk about those things. We're family, right? Let's talk about something else. And because I come from the aunts and uncles of my family came from a blended family, divorced, remarried, half siblings. Like there's that dynamic into it. And even their childhood brings that same thing up. So it's been anytime anybody's feelings can get hurt over a conversation that doesn't help us today, the elders have just been like, we don't talk about that. So in that aspect, also the younger kids now have kind of don't show up to the family gatherings. So I say we don't talk about it now, but our family gatherings are not what they used to be. And I think a lot of it's because of using politics or other things just to attack people at the family. Because I don't know, from the therapist perspective, like, do certain people want to have beef with people and bring things up because they have an audience and they want people to keep score of who's right and who's wrong? Because you would think, like, if you have an issue with somebody, you'd want to have it handle that more privately. But it seems in those family dynamics, at least from my family, somebody wants an audience to be able to go, you saw what they said to me, right? And try to justify their actions.
Yeah, you know what comes to my mind is all the times I watch the movie, the documentary, The Social Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
And they highlighted in there, social media has such a big part to play with this, that a lot of our feeds, and for those of you guys who haven't watched The Social Dilemma, please go watch it. It's 4 years old, but it's still everything they talk about is still relevant. In fact, they were kind of ahead of everything. It's more relevant right now. So with The Social Dilemma, they highlighted on social media platforms, you and the person in the same room as you could have almost the exact same friends, but you're not going to be seeing the same feeds. And so much is curated in the content that we consume that unless you're literally bouncing back and forth from CNN to Fox to independent reporters, unless you're doing 1/3 of all those types of things, you're not going to get a nuanced approach. You're not going to get new ideas. It's, the algorithm is going to feed you what kind of aligns with the other videos you've been looking at, or it's at least going to tilt heavily in that direction, right? So families, like Brandon said, you definitely have no shortage of issues to fight about, things that beef with each other. And I like how you brought up, Brandon, how sometimes people are just kind of waiting to poke at someone. Maybe it's something from their childhood they still have resentment towards. And then now when they see that you have a different political view, it's like, now I got more reason to call him this, that, and the other, or to make fun of them or dismiss them and kind of belittle them because I'm smarter, I know more. For those of you who don't know of a terminology called virtue signaling, anybody is capable of doing it. People have done it for years, but it's been talked about more recently where someone will say something out loud that makes them more righteous, more noble. And because of that, they're letting the world know that they have a higher morale, or not morale, but they have higher morals. They're a better person because they put value in certain things that other people neglect or other people don't put value in. It's not just the left. It's not just the right. It's just people in general. They have a tendency to want to say, hey, look at me. I'm a compassionate narcissist. I'm a person that I love people so much that it's okay for me to be aggressive, self-promoting, like just being grandiose in your opinions. A couple families have shared with me some ideas that they've done in recent years, one of which I did not help anyone with, but when this family told me that, I started sharing it with people. And the other ideas I just kind of came up with by work with different types of families who are trying to avoid holiday get-togethers or holiday parties that could turn into arguments. But because this year it's the big grand poobah of them all when it comes to the election, I'm going to share a couple of these things. Brandon, I want you to tell me what you think about them. Okay. You said the elders of the family. I like that term because the elders of the family really are the ones that everyone in the family look to be the people who bring rhyme and reason and, thoughts of, like, hey, let's all get along or let's enjoy this meal instead of fight and bring up old stuff, right? So we look to the authority people in the families as being the people who've been around the longest and who've earned the amount of respect from others because they've lived to tell the tale. So one family in particular, they said they actually had to make a family like proclamation, so to speak. And I was like, really? What'd you do? They said, we're having a political free family party. So they put out the group text. They actually made a little flyer for it. It said political free. I think it was political free. They kind of came up with a little catchy term or something like that. But basically what it was, say, hey, we're going to have this holiday get together party for Christmas time. And this was a couple years ago. Was it a couple years ago? Can't remember. It might have been last year. I'm getting old. So what they did was they said, we're going to have a political party or a non-political party. It was kind of like a joke to it. But it was a Christmas family party. They just simply said, hey, you guys, bring your white elephant gifts, bring this, bring that, and bring your good vibes, because at this party, we're not going to have anyone talking about politics. Instead, they said, instead of talking about politics, you should be talking about, something related to gifts or holiday. Instead of talking about all the things you don't like, we're going to talk about the things that you do like and appreciate about everyone in the family. So it was a family that I gave them some ideas how to do like little family connection type of experiments, but they took it to their own. Well, they took it on their own to add the let's not talk about politics. Then once everybody got to the party, the patriarch of the family said, hey, listen, thanks you guys so much. Want to enjoy everybody. I want everybody to enjoy yourselves. But what he did is he said, I'm going to address the whole entire party in the very beginning and at the very end. And then after I address them at the end, people can hang out as long as they want, but they can take off. So when everybody was when everybody was present at the party, people are eating hors d'oeuvres, he stopped, thanked everybody for coming, thanked everybody for laughing at his joke that they're not going to have no politics conversation at the party. And then he kind of just bared his own thoughts and feelings about why it was so important for him to not have people talk about these things. So instead of just saying, hey, don't talk about these things, he said, the reason why it's important for us is because I don't have as much time on this earth. I don't have as many Christmases. I don't have as many holidays. When I was younger, he said he would have been one of the very first people that would have brought up some sort of drama, some sort of issue or beef in the family, kind of talked about on the side and got some people stirred up in the family. Half the family would have been mad and upset. The other half of the family wouldn't have known what's going on. Half the family left there saying, I'm never coming back. And the other half of the family saying, what happened? I didn't even know what took place. They were totally oblivious to it. He said, I would have been that type of guy that pokes fun and joked around with people. He goes, but our family is so important. And we've seen in recent years that families can be ripped apart, that can be turned upside down in their heads just because people have a couple different beliefs. Even though those beliefs may be core to you as a person, we've had these people in our lives longer than we've had political parties. We've had these people in our lives, and they're going to be alive a lot longer. Say who you vote for is not going to be at your deathbed when you're in the hospital and you're dying. He made such good points. I said, hey, can I copy that and borrow that? And so this year, it did happen last year because I've already given this advice out to 2 other people. So this year is the first year that I'm telling people that they should put it out with the group chat. They should already establish it ahead of time that you're going to avoid this, but you're going to avoid it because personally for you, whoever's throwing the party, it's your right to say, hey, listen, we're having a party, but don't bring heroin. We're having a party.
House.
Yeah.
It's their house.
We're having a party, but don't bring your mistress if your wife is going to be there. Right? Like there's certain things that you just kind of like you don't do. But the party host, they can dictate that. I've seen people in parties saying, listen, please bring some meat because we're going to barbecue. And I've had other parties say, listen, please don't bring anything. We're going to provide everything for you guys. Please bring a welcoming gift if you like, but don't bring us any presents. So there's lots of instructions with the party. So why not give instructions to the party of telling people how to be civil and polite? And remember that family is a whole lot easier to connect with and take a walk down memory lane and have some nostalgia if you're not talking about current hurt and pain and fights and differences. Because there's lots of people in every family, they're going to be ignorant to certain subjects. Doesn't mean that they're bad or they're evil. Just means that they don't know. It's the definition of ignorance, not knowing. If your family members don't know, I would ask yourself, is at the holiday party the time to convince them? So this last thing I wanted to share and want to hear Brandon thinks about this. A lot of people publicly like to make their political affiliations known through social media. Some people, they're really heavily involved in it and activism. That's great. However, that when you walk into a family party, that should be the Switzerland for political discussions and activism. So even if you're publicly promoting one specific agenda or one specific party and you're trying to get everybody to vote for the candidate you want, I suggest you leave that on the doorstep before you walk in the house, before you walk in the family party, because it only is going to cause, well, you might get lucky and there may be everybody there on your side. But the young people, sometimes they just listen and they don't really say much. I've had this happen a number of times where young people said, hey, listen, I was going to tell my parents that I wanted nothing to do with our religion, or I was going to tell my parents that I had questions or doubts about their political views, their religious views. I was going to tell my parents how I have a friend at school that I want to bring over to the house, but this friend is openly gay or bisexual. And when I heard my parents talking about religion, political views, and their views on, someone being gay or something like that, those are things that the teenagers that they told me, they never commented, but they sat and listened. And they made their own determination, or they determined themselves that they could not bring up the topics that they wanted to have a conversation with their parents about, because they were under the assumption that their parents had a very extreme viewpoint of that subject, because their parents were getting cavalier at a family party and just talking out loud and throwing shade on stuff. Only for months later for me to have the kid express those same concerns to their parents. And their parents always tell me something very similar in front of their kids. Well, we don't really mean that. Or like, we were just talking. We were just, they seem to want to share that what they said at that particular moment that their kid heard them say was a small portion of the big picture of how they think and how they feel about that subject. But they were just kind of caught in the moment and they were kind of just jumping on the bandwagon. You know how it is when someone's at work and someone goes, oh man, you notice Stacy's always late. So yeah, and she's lazy. Yeah, I know she's this too. And then all of a sudden everybody just starts talking trash about Stacy. Okay. It just takes one person to come in and says, who you guys talking about? Stacy, she's always like this and that. Oh, really? That's interesting because I've never seen that. Or she's been really sweet to me. Everybody hits the brakes.
Whole conversation.
People start shifting the conversation. So Brandon, I was wondering, what do you think about not making it public? Or if you're a person that makes your political views public, do you think it's possible or even wise for someone to heed this advice, or to be like, okay, maybe I could just stop it on the public stuff. I don't have to bring it to the personal family relationships.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts that kind of about everything you said. So I'm going to go back and I'll get to that point. I think in the Don't Freak Out events that we've done, that you've done, is you talk about responding is better than reacting. So if you're hosting a party, you're responding instead of inviting people.
Actually, it's initiating. So reacting,
perfect.
Responding, reacting bad, responding good, initiating meaning starting something, which would be the host of the party.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So thank you for correcting me on that. So initiating, where you're inviting somebody into your home. And if we go back to just the psychology, the things that you've talked about with like tribes, inviting somebody into your area, your personal home, is a huge sign of respect. So you also, I feel like it's fair that you can say, hey, these are the rules that I'm going to have at my house that you're coming in. But initiating it also takes the edge off, so you're not at the dinner table, nobody's talking about everything, somebody's waiting for somebody to say something, and then it pops off and explodes and turns this whole thing.
It's harder to stop it as the party host once it's already gotten going. Yeah,
correct. So I think that's a huge aspect of things. I think that also helps with, for some people, there's times in my family that if somebody could think, if I say that, so-and-so won't be there. Well, they have that right, and it may feel bad. But if so-and-so doesn't want to go to the party because you say, hey, no politics out there, well, they were looking for drama. So you're saving yourself.
If they get offended by that, then
the whole night was going to be way different than you expected. So I think that's a great thing. Also, too, I would say with how active people are on social media and how active people are posting their political views right now, I don't think if you go to a family party, anybody's curious what side of the fence you're on. I think they pretty much know. If you're friends on Facebook, different things. Plus, as somebody who's younger, the last thing I want to hear at Thanksgiving dinner is my 50-year-old mother and her siblings saying, you posted this on Facebook. I don't want to know my parents are on social media in the first place, let alone arguing about what's on there or somebody's comment that they don't remember. I've been on social media forever. Do you know how many things I remember I commented? Like 2. You just don't recall. It's not worth bringing it up. I also think from the aspect of politically, just seeing how I grew up, seeing both sides of the spectrum. Everybody's going to have, society has these issues, all these things are going on. We're at this peril, we're at this, the apex of stress. Okay, let's say for whatever side you're on, society collapses the way you're afraid, or this person's a bad person because of this. When everything hits the fan, do you think that people are going to be asking you, who did you vote for? And if you're in Utah, you're going to go gather with everybody who voted your same way? Or if there's an earthquake, if there's a natural disaster, if something happens, are you going to call your family first? So I think even if you want to play the political game, if you want to think about it from the political aspect of things could go wrong, why would you burn the bridge of the people that you're going to most likely go to first for help to survive? So you can have your belief, you can feel like your way is going to be the right way. It could be however you want to view it, but do you really want to burn the bridges with the people who are going to answer your phone call when you're going to need the most amount of help? So I think initiating it is great. Don't have it at the dinner table. So you have the opportunity to connect and have those things. So then whatever happens, however this plays out, you want to know somebody has your back. And the last thing, if you want to make it kind of funny, is do you want somebody to not feed you because you were bragging about what you shared on Facebook politically? Like that's going to be the reason you don't get fed one day? Like that's what it's going to come down to, is you tweeted something that they didn't like and you brought it up at the dinner table and it blew up and they don't talk to you anymore. Is that really worth it?
Unfortunately, not enough people actually take that into consideration. It's usually like, hey, they have a different opinion. I have to correct their difference of opinion, not realizing that this is becoming very tribal more and more every month as we keep on going. The insults, the accusations from one side to the other side, it's endless. There's constant content, right? There's from YouTube to news stations, whatever it is. Everybody has more. There's more topics and more issues that are happening. They can't cover them all. So it's like we're getting inundated with all these different types of subjects. It's going to make us feel some sort of way. And what you said is truer than all that. If there's an earthquake, if there's a natural disaster, which there will be, it's in our lives, the chances of us as adults not having to deal with some sort of, major issue or crisis in our life, let alone if it's a natural disaster where we're going to need community support. How horrible would it be if people made their final decisions of who to share resources with, who to share, their labor with, who to share their love with and give support to based solely upon who they voted for. Up to this point, I think we've pretty much avoided that. I think up to this point, we as people, when, natural disasters have happened, people kind of just naturally know that someone's drowning. I need help them from drowning. I don't need to know who they voted for, why they voted for them. And that's why I couldn't agree more that if you're a person out there that you see yourself as you get sucked into a lot of political disputes, or maybe you're just a person that you feel like you get sucked into wanting to see what other people are talking about and then weighing in, and you just want to practice talking out loud and debating with people about politics. Great. Awesome. There's plenty of forums online to do that. There's plenty of places to do that. You can get involved in local city councils. There's plenty of places where you could really learn how to talk publicly about your political opinions and views. We're just saying at the dinner table during the holidays, and I think you said it, Brandon, people are going through enough hard times in the holidays anyways that are just stemming from the past. So many people have really bad, messed up holiday experiences. Some people don't go to family parties anymore because they've had the politics discussions, because they felt like, hey, I tried to talk and give a nuanced opinion or approach to something. I got shut down. I got yelled at. It's impossible to bait me in nowadays to talking about politics. In fact, in recent parties, even when they're just friend parties, when someone brings up politics, I will mock it and make fun of both sides about it lightly, not too bad where it hurts someone's feelings, only to say I'm not qualified. I shouldn't be talking about this because the only thing I know is what people around me tell me. And that means I don't really have an opinion. I'm just listening to other people. So, hey, and I just kind of divert the conversation. When people keep on trying to get me into the politics conversation, I just go, no, I can't hear it, because if I keep on hearing, I'm eventually going to say something and it's going to be really stupid because I don't know what I'm talking about. Just mock myself, mock the scenario, and get out of the conversation as quickly as possible.
I think that's a huge thing to, yeah, because what's it worth? Like, if my friend has a political view about something, there's a lot of times where it comes from how they were brought up. It's very personal, and you going against their opinion can bring up a lot of other emotions and the emotional memory of being attacked for something. There's just so much nuance to it. Also, I think we forget this as Americans. It's a privilege to even have these conversations about politics, to be open, to mock the other side, to be able to say that person's a bad person, or I'm not going to vote. We can say things that in other countries and throughout most of human history, you would not be allowed to do. Like, we have the ability to do that.
We have the freedom to have an opinion and be pissed off and share it publicly.
Yeah, like that's a privilege that we have that we forget about because it's so commonplace. The news, everybody's trying to do this. And at the end of the day is, I don't want to burn a relationship on something I had the privilege to talk about. Where you look throughout history, everybody's bringing up history. How many times did a ruler, you go to Nero in Rome, and people who were against them had to create 666 to be able to not talk? Like, they had to hide in code that I disagree with this. And now we can openly go on Twitter and say, I hate this person. This is the worst president ever. This person's that, with no repercussions. I think that's something that's lost on us is, that's a privilege, and why are we going to bring that up to the family dinner table? Like, this is right or wrong. If you're not on my side, I'm against you. Well, that defeats the purpose of why we're even allowed to talk about politics if you're going to have that approach with people. And if you want to have that approach, that is totally fine. And there's so much more we can relate on and talk about and just have a good time, even if it's childhood memories, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's hard enough just to be a human right now and trying to figure out the technology and all this stuff. I don't think it's really that needed to be that heated about that one specific thing.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of summarize the whole entire thing that we're trying to, I guess, say is that when it comes to family relationships, and even if you're not blood related, you know, you're married to someone, intimate, close, personal friend and family relationships, when you have an opportunity sitting right there to have a discussion about politics, there's always going to be a chance that that conversation could go off the rails and could get out of control. And over here, you have a conversation about things that are not divisive. Things like someone's kids, how's their dog, how's their house remodel, how's their job. Those types of conversations also help a family member or loved one talk about things that are important to them and that are meaningful to them, but just minus the confrontation. So in essence, what Brandon's saying and what we're saying is that when in doubt, like if you're not sure what to do or to get involved in a political conversation with your family, to start one, when in doubt, always err on doing what's best for the relationship. If you've been able to, you know, look at the person you're potentially about to get in a conversation with at a dinner table party, especially with family and you know each other, when you're looking at that person, if that person tends to be a person that's pretty opinionated, maybe someone who is naive in your opinion, or maybe someone who's confrontational, whatever the situation is, just ask yourself, it's like, man, is bringing up political views or asking them about their political views when you know or you're pretty confident what they are in a public setting, is that going to help your relationship with that person, or is it going to help the relationship that that person has with everybody else in the room? Because you could be setting someone else up just to, like, it's almost like gaslighting them. You know what I mean? You could be setting, it's like, oh, tell me about your political views, Uncle Johnny, who's never been married and hates kids and hates this, in front of Uncle Sam and Auntie Sue, who's got 7 kids, and they, you know, like completely different spectrums. Like, don't open up that can of worms, you guys. Take a pass. It's not worth it. Because when things really hit the fan, right? When the brownies really hit the fan, the people that you're going to turn to, your close, intimate family members and friends. And if those people with you have more in common than you have not in common, you're going to be able to be there for each other and help each other out. But if your last interaction with each other was fighting and disagreeing about political things that you literally have zero control over, you don't even control who is running for president, who's not running for president, who their vice president is. You have no control over any of these things. Be very careful not to adopt it as being part of you and who you are. Your political views are just that, it's your views. It's not really an identity. It can be something that you identify with, but it's not like, hey, my name's David and I'm a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and my middle name is Michael. Like, you don't introduce yourself like that. And the reason why you don't, because these are things you've chosen. Your family, a lot of times you don't get to choose your family. And so because you don't get to choose your family, we should be really careful and reverent of that relationship, because that relationship, even if it's not a great relationship with a family member, you don't want to create more disconnection and more confrontation in a time of our life and in our civilization where there's plenty of confrontation on the menu. In fact, what I think is I think people need better social health when it comes to talking about politics. What I think people need to do is exercise a little bit of, hey, it's your right, it's my right, but we don't have to talk about it in an intimate relationship. We can just let that be and talk about your kids, talk about your career, whatever it is that gets you up in the morning that's not combative.
And if you're to think about it from a strategic standpoint, if you're trying to convince somebody, because really your political views show with who you vote for, and that's private, that's supposed to be private information. But if your goal is to try to convince somebody of how you view things, fighting with them is going to make them more defensive, and they're never going to see your point of view because they feel like you're being personally attacked. If you personally attack the person, you're not going to get them to see where you're coming from. And that's with everything in life. If you're trying, I can't remember who the quote's from. You can change my mind in a conversation. You can't change my mind in an argument.
True. Very true. Yeah. And even think that you have the power. It's
or responsibility too.
I think it's a very adolescent trait that a lot of adults think. They're like, hey, this person is just dumb or naive and they don't know that. So if I just tell them something and I give them new information, even when they're not wanting it, even when they didn't ask for it, it's going to be for their betterment. That rarely plays out that way. Like you said, people rarely go, oh, wow, now that you've insulted me, called my political party stupid and all these other things, now I understand that I'm ridiculous. Now I understand that I'm voting for the wrong person. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. We'll have to talk about it another time. The psychology of why people trust everything they see on their feed. Like that it's truth and fact. There's not even manipulation, but like not even getting the whole, how much can you really learn in a minute YouTube short or TikTok? Like there is that where I do have questions for you at some point of, if that's everybody's reality and everybody's got a different reality, like how can you as the individual trust that what you're seeing is true? And like, why does that happen from a psychological perspective? Like, oh, but I saw it on social media, so it must be true. This is a weird time in human history to be able to have information pop up that way and generate opinions based off of something so quick and so instant.
Yeah. How do you help someone see your reality when there's so many different variations of reality right now? Everybody's kind of living in their own reality. And that's what they talked about in The Social Dilemma, where their feed is their reality because they're not aware that something's happening in the back end. They're not aware that they're digging deeper and deeper into our brainstem to implant certain thoughts and ideas. And we think we're just scrolling and we think that the algorithm is just giving us more of what we want, not realizing that there might be a deeper manipulation, deeper play going on than just giving us what we want, but it's also giving us something that other people think that we want or we should want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a great conversation for next time. In fact, I really like that one a lot. So let's just go ahead and wrap it up for today. In summary, I just want to let you guys know life is really all about relationships, you guys. The family members, the close, intimate friends, and people who are in your life, who've always been in your life, will always be in your life, assuming that you're not trying to point out differences about your life. If they have a belief in a political party, in a religion, that's very similar to they believe that the person that they choose to marry is going to be the best person to improve their life. You may have opinions on the people your family members and loved ones marry, whether they're good for them or not. But the good thing about it is they get to make their own decision. They get to choose that for themselves. Hopefully your family members didn't call you up and say, hey, I'm dating this girl and I'm really thinking about marrying her. What do you think? I know you've never met her, but what do you think? Do you think I should marry her or not? Hopefully people aren't going out of their way to ask you for permission of who they date and who they have close, intimate relationships with. Just as you shouldn't be going out and ask your family and friends, hey, is it all right if I believe this specific thing, if I have this opinion on something? Instead, what I think we could do better is that when we're around our family members and loved ones or friends, and if they do bring up something like politics that they're passionate about, congratulate them, be agreeable with them, say, wow, that's interesting. I'm so glad that you're a part of something that you really like and you're into, and it gives you purpose and meaning. I'm happy for you. Sharing your happiness with your family members and loved ones because they found some sort of, idea or some sort of belief system that they feel is working for them. Great. Congratulate them. And when they turn on you and say, oh, well, you must feel and think the same way. Of course, you don't have to lie. You don't have to tell them, yeah, I feel exactly like you. You could have a difference of opinion, specifically when it comes to political things. But what you could also do at that moment, after you're agreeable with them and after you're telling them, hey, you're happy for them, this and that and the other, when they ask you or just assume that you're on their team, you could say, oh, well, gosh, I'd get into politics, but I really don't know that much about it. Wink, wink. Just play dumb. One of the best things we can do as human beings to preserve relationships is not always tell the relationships what we think about them in the relationship every time that they ask us or every opportunity that we get. Sometimes we can just sit back, keep our mouth shut, let them live their life and love them for the people that they are to us, not try to change them to be more like us. Well, you guys, until next time, hopefully this information hit you somewhere, got you in your feelings, or at least made you think just a little bit. And thanks again to my producer, Brandon, for jumping on the mic. I like having Brandon on here to go back and forth with me. So don't be surprised if you hear he and I having conversations back and forth like we did last episode and like we did this episode. And as always, you guys, remember, when in doubt, you know what to do. Come press OG Therapy. Listen to books, podcasts, whatever you got to do to improve the relationships and most importantly, to improve the social health of your life. And until next time, be cool.